everybody, it's Anthony Brogdon, and I'm coming at you strongly with a lady on the channel that y'all gonna like this one. Oh my God, this gonna be gooder than good, better than good, and goodest as it can be. Oh, this is gonna and let me tell you something. We're gonna get deep on you all. We're gonna go into that mental type thing of what has happened to black folk and kind of how we react to it. That's got to be something to do with the story, but it's got more to it than that, my friends. From a lady who knows this is her profession from a legal standpoint. She's nationally known for her efforts. And I'm so excited that she's on Strong Inspiration. I might not even told you who I am. I'm that excited, but my name is Anthony Brogdon, and I'm an ordinary guy trying to do something extraordinary through the people who come on the show. This is not me. I just host it and do my very best to ask some intelligent questions. All right. And I'm a better person since Strong Inspiration. So you, please, my viewers, subscribe. It's free. This is free Black history and free wellness, free inspiration. And tell somebody about Strong Inspiration. Hit the like button. There is no love button. Hit the like button on this video. Hit the notifications bell so you get a ding, a shock, a smoke signal, something to let you know there's new content. Did you watch the one that I did with the young lady that said the trauma in her family? Really did a number on her, but it was through the work of God. And somebody said something that made her excel in life. Watch that video. There's a couple of them on here. Did you see the one I did with the lady who said she had stage 4 cancer? Stage 4 cancer. She said, I'm not going to die. Don't want to die. So she started eating better. Fruits and vegetables and cut out the carbs and the sugars and all that, along with what the doctor had prescribed. And she did take the radiation and the chemos and things. She lost hair. She said, but I don't want to be this way. So as a result of the research she did and the help and God, she cured herself and got a head full of hair. Watch that video. Did you see the one I did with the lady who, this is a different type instance, she integrated a school in Florida. And she said her classmates tried to kill her one day. Wow. They had promised her that they would not allow her to graduate with them. She did. They beat her up too one day. She did, and now she has a PhD. Watch that video. Did you see the one I did with the guy out of West Palm Beach, Florida, who has spent his life and his career mentoring young black men? He says, this is what I do. This dude, and I've cried a few times on the show. I couldn't help it. He was one of them. It's these, and I got a feeling this is going to happen here today. We'll see. But watch this go deep on you, my friends. And so watch the videos. The couple housekeeping things is I am a filmmaker. Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America is a documentary I did that toured to over 40 cities in America, Toronto, Canada, London, England, and it went to her town. I had a couple showings at a Black museum called the Apex in her town. I wrote this book, which complements the movie. My guest, she was at a book signing that I had in Montgomery and bought a copy. And I was happy that she did. Oh my God, I'm happy everybody does, because it gets me to my goal of letting people know what's in this book and the amazing Black history stories of enslaved Black folks who owned businesses and went to college and so much more. And I got to tell you, I give you some of what them racists tried to do to hurt us, building them freeways through our towns and and the enslavement that they tried to put us through and how we fought back against that. It's in the book, everybody. It's and I'm speaking around the country, my friends. I just was in Philadelphia. I told them up. I told them up at this black-owned coffee shop, and the people came in. They were sitting there. They wondered who I am, and I got to talking, and them people, no one said a word for the whole 40 minutes. They looked at me. I thought they was dead. Them people, man. And then I had a conference. And now check this out. I got to go because I want the sister to come on. But I'm in Beaufort, South Carolina in a couple of weeks, everybody. I'm going down there to the original Gullah Geechee Festival. Ooh. I got a book signing in Gullah Geechee headquarters, so to speak, in Beaufort, South Carolina. And all this is, and where you can get my book is on my website, businessintheblack.net. Go there today. Don't wait. And the book is very reasonably priced. I don't want them in my basement no longer. I want y'all to have it, my friends. Now, you hear me use this term strong a lot. Strong is my favorite word. And in my world, strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that is my introduction to the Strong Soul Sister on the channel today. Come on, beautiful lady. Introduce yourself. Let's get it on.
Wow, I love that, Anthony Brogdon. Your energy, your passion. I don't just feel it, I see it, and it just surrounds you. So you're a blessing, and I want you to know that. I really want you to know that your presence in the community and wherever you land your feet to speak, you are a blessing. So I applaud you. And if no one has told you that today or this week, I'm telling you, you are a blessing to.
I love hearing it. I ain't gonna lie. I love hearing it. So tell us your name. Tell us your name.
I am Terry Thompson. I am, gosh, how do I start? I'm an attorney, I'm a part-time judge, and I'm also an author. I'm an author of what's in my background, The Adventures with Kai. And my first book out of that series of books is called Kinky Curly Mind. That's my passion, along with, of course, being a lawyer. I've been practicing law now, oh, wow, over 30 years.
Is that right? Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Started out when you was in your teens.
That's right. I was in my teens.
So that's another story. So on that, let me ask you a couple questions about yourself. Let the audience get to know you. Where were you born and raised?
So I was actually born in a small city in North Carolina called Elizabeth City. And the reason we were there is because my parents were professors at an HBCU, Elizabeth City State University. I don't have any recollection of it because we then immediately moved to Montgomery, Alabama, which is really where I claim to be my home because that's where I was raised. That's where I learned everything. That's where I got my energy from, being deeply placed in the South, where the birth of the civil rights movement began, where all of the struggles, where, I could go on and on, where slaves were brought through the Alabama River. So that is where I really claim to be my home because that's where I really got to know not just my family, not just my surroundings, but myself and learning what my place in this world meant.
With that said, did y'all grow up in a black neighborhood?
Yes,
were white people nearby? What was
you know
that?
what? I grew up in a black neighborhood. I went to a black elementary school. I went to a black high school. And I'm gonna be very transparent. That's all I knew. I mean, of course, I knew of other races and ethnic groups. Of course, I was fully aware of that. But in my family, we celebrated going to black schools. That wasn't something we were ashamed of or we had to do. And in fact, everyone in my family went to an HBCU after high school.
Okay, I
So it
love
was
it.
just
Yes.
ingrained in me to have this community that I was raised in. When I say raised, I'm not talking about just as a child, but all the way through, like I said, college.
Okay.
That was just deeply poured into me.
Where did the white people live?
On the other side. Well, and actually in Montgomery, when I grew up in Montgomery, we lived on the west side. In fact, my family home is still on the west side. And there, when I grew up, there were, and there still are, you can see like remnants of older homes that are dilapidated. And of course, some of these homes are being gentrified, gentrification, of course, is in place, but you can still see remnants of those older homes. And some of those homes were, in fact, owned by Black people, but some of those homes further out were owned by white people.
Okay.
And now in Montgomery, it's fully, of course, integrated, obviously, but there is a section of Montgomery where I'm from on the west side where it has remained Black. But like I said, gentrification is
Yeah,
making its
yeah.
way throughout.
Now, with that said, did your parents say anything about white people be leery of them? I mean, and what reason why I asked this? I'm in the North, I'm in Detroit, and you hear the stories of Montgomery and stuff like that, back in the '50s and the civil rights and slavery. Did you feel that? Did you feel how? What was your connection with white people? Did you feel like they were better than you, or I got to be leery of them? Did you hear any of those kind of stories?
Now that I take my mind back in time, yes, there were concerns, and I remember being told stories, and I remember being told stories, and I would hear them thinking, "Is that really true?" Stories about great great uncles or great uncles encounters with the KKK. But actually, but as a child, it almost seemed like it was a fairy tale. But going back to your point, though, yes, there was some hesitancy around it because it was, I lived in Montgomery. It's where Dr. King spoke. It's where we had the Montgomery City bus boycotts. So of course I knew about the heartache and the pain and the suffering that my people went through, and that obviously brings this. Okay, this is a really not this Montgomery, but our world is in a really shaky place where my people are looked down upon. Because remember, like I said, I went to all Black schools. And my uncle went to Howard Medical School. All my brothers, my brothers went to Alabama State. I have cousins that went to Tuskegee. And the list of HBCUs goes on. So in my family, we were just raised to have such a love and appreciation for our Blackness, for our history. Now, I do remember growing up in Montgomery, we didn't get Black history lessons,
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, that
yeah,
wasn't something I recall, unless I've forgotten it, but I don't
yeah,
recall like an emphasis on Black history and Black history in Montgomery. Those were things we learned on our own. When I say on
yeah,
our own, it's like what family taught us. I
yeah.
had cousins that were involved in the marches, so that's where I learned it, but not out of a book.
Yeah. Let me
Yeah.
let me ask you this: where is the enslavement at in your family? Do you know further down in Alabama or something like that?
Yes,
Yeah.
actually, my brother and I attribute this to him because he really does a lot of our family history, and I haven't gone yet, but he has recently located. My family name is Jarrett, Jarrett, and so he recently located that there is a Jarrett plantation. So, like I said, he recently found it, and I cannot wait to go. But it's in Alabama. Um, I can't think of the area right now. I want to say it's kind of west of
Okay.
Montgomery,
Okay.
but yeah, that's one of the things we're going to deeply, deeply look into.
With that said, and your family is who you are, the educators, what have you. Where did that begin? Is there a great great grandfather or something like
You know
that
what? I
who
am
tells that story? Y'all gonna get an education, and he or she got an education.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question because again, my brother did a deep dive and spent so much time in the libraries and finding documents related to our family. And there's a story though. There's a story that is in our family where, and I'm talking great 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 greats, right? Enslaved, right? Family members who who used to sneak to read. And when I heard just that story, that in my bloodline, my ancestors, they had to sneak to read, that they taught themselves and how they taught themselves. I don't know the details of that. I don't know if there was a white master or
Right.
whoever that taught them. That I don't know any details. But the story that was always passed down to me was there was this great, 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 who would be my great, great, great grandfather, I think it's three, uh, was enslaved and he had to sneak to read. And that just stuck with me. He had to sneak.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure.
And
But
that
that,
just hit me on so many levels. Like it's every time I think about it and pause, sometimes it brings tears to my eyes.
yeah, sure.
Sometimes it makes me feel full of joy. It just brings this river of emotions that in my family, here I am. I have all of these titles now. In 2022, I became a magistrate, and I have all of these successes. But I think back to my bloodline started with them being trampled, beaten, enslaved. And there was one in my family that had to sneak to read.
Yeah, sure. Let me
Yeah.
let me ask you this. I guess I'm taking liberties. Okay, your family got a little bit of money. Your parents, educators, what have you. Okay, middle class, you call it what you want. Why
Mhm.
didn't they send you to a private school? You know what I
Well,
mean? Because
actually,
there's a private school in Montgomery. I would suspect that where the better well-to-do black folks could have gone to,
well,
and
no,
but they
it
took a
was,
chance on that public school to give you a quality education. What's that dynamic?
well, actually, I did attend, I guess it could be considered a private school. There was a Black Catholic school. I wasn't Catholic, I'm not Catholic.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, I
And
got
so we did
you.
attend St. Jude, which was smaller. It was a real small, like my graduating class at St. Jude was 51 students,
I got you. I got you.
Yeah.
So it was something
So
like that. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But not all my life was in private
Yeah, yeah,
school. It
yeah.
was, I went to public school, and then I think I ended up at St. Jude, I guess around maybe fifth or sixth grade, I
I
think.
got you. I
But
got
prior
you.
to that, we were in public school, yeah.
Just one more on you.
Uh-huh.
Being that way, did you know how to fight? I mean, you grew up kind of privileged, and some of them other kids in your neighborhood was wondering who you are to be you talking proper and stuff like that. Did you know how to decode it? That's not what it's called.
No, I
There's a
know what you
term
mean
for
though,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
But you know what? Actually, I never had any. Of course, kids pick on
yeah, yeah,
kids
yeah,
pick on
yeah,
kids.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was always picked on because I was always the skinniest. Um,
Oh,
I
okay.
went all the way up through law school being called Twiggy. So I was always
Oh,
teased for being skinny. But no, I didn't really have any hardships or roughness with other Black children, my peers. I don't recall that other than, like I said, typical
yeah,
teasing.
typical type stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Because uh, there's trauma in black family
Hmm.
throughout our history. Some people deal with it different ways. What's that dynamic of how to deal with it? And I guess what I'm getting at is some people it really takes them down.
Yes.
What happens there?
You know what? That is such a profound question because trauma, and I've done a lot of studies on trauma as a lawyer, because I've had clients, and we can talk about that later, who definitely ended up in the criminal justice system primarily because of trauma that they lived through, went through, felt, saw, that kind of thing. But what propels some people out of it, let's say better than others. I'm not going to say all of us are healed, perfect people, because enslavement, and there's been studies on this. I'm not just speaking out of my head, but there's been studies by people way smarter than me, with more degrees than me, who talk about the trauma of enslavement through the generations. But aside from that, going back to your point, what makes some of us come out of it okay? I'm not going to say we all come out of this
Yeah, yeah,
trauma
sure,
well,
sure,
because we all have it. We all
sure,
have it. I don't pretend to not have it on
sure,
some level.
sure.
But I do know that my creator, God, is a major part of my life. And it was a major part of my family's life, major. Not just to the point where I have, family members that went into ministry, but church and God and religion and belief and spirituality was so ingrained in us, so ingrained. And I really think that that connection to a higher source can help pull us out of the deep clutches of trauma. And when I talk about trauma, I'm talking about the real stuff that weighs down Black men in our community, Black women in our community, and how we pass it down to our children. Some of us not even knowing that we're passing it down, whether it's in the form of further abuse, whether it's in the form of addiction, whether it's in the form of mental health. Because I've seen all of that in the criminal justice system as a lawyer. It's almost, you can almost just see a person, and you may not know the details of everything they went through, but you can see that there is some level of trauma. And I can only speak for me and my immediate family, is that what helped us get on a more solid footing, in spite of the trauma, is that connection with a higher source.
Okay, let me ask you this. I'm gonna go back to the beginning. What is
Mhm.
trauma?
Trauma is that, let's see if I can make it real simple, at least so that others, I don't lose people. Trauma is that effect that we have in us, sometimes around us, but more importantly in us, that is the result of an experience that is both negative, detrimental, and in sometimes deadly situations. And the effect of those negative experiences shows up in us in different ways. It can show up in addiction. It can show up in, like I said, uh, uh, I was abused, therefore I might abuse my child. It can show up in mental health. And mental health is a big piece of trauma that I've seen. Um, and, mental health is not just, some people think, oh, well, mental health is that person on the corner talking to themselves. Yeah, that is mental health. But mental health also shows up in profound sadness. It shows up in anxiety. It shows up in depression. It shows up in overeating. It shows up in feelings of loneliness. So mental health shows up in many different layers.
I got you.
Yeah.
Let's go back to how people, so people can understand how you can even say what you're saying with the knowledge that you're saying. You're an attorney that
Mhm.
do what? And how does you know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
people can say, okay, why is she saying this? And you
Yeah.
can
Where
tell
am
them
I
your
getting that from?
background as to why you're
Right.
saying this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad you asked that, because I can speak on it. And a lot of people might say, well, you're just a lawyer. How do you know about this stuff about
Right,
trauma, mental
right,
illness? What
right,
are you talking about?
right.
I became a lawyer, like I said, now with
So
33.
you however many, yeah, we ain't gotta go into that. Yeah, okay, I got you.
But I became a lawyer, and not just a lawyer, but I've always practiced in the field of criminal defense work. And not only criminal defense work, but a very particularized niche of criminal defense law called death penalty work, where I represent those where the state and the federal government seeks to execute for the crimes that they've committed. So I've been doing death penalty work specifically since 2005. And so I've done that, oh gosh, almost close to what, 19, 20 years now.
So you're seeing the worst of it, right?
I see the worst of humanity. I see the worst of humanity.
Oh
I
my
have
God.
clients that are Black, white, male, female, young, old, that have been charged with and have committed in some cases. Some clients are have lesser charges. But in any event, I've had clients that are accused of the worst things because that's what sets it apart. That's why the federal government right now only do federal capital cases. And so my clients are accused of the most heinous crimes. And like I said, I have a lot of my clients, all of them, I will say this, have not only seen trauma, most of them, I would say close to 98% of my clients are mentally ill.
Well, let me stop you there. This is deep. When you look in their eyes, do you see a person?
I see a person. And you know why I see a person? Because God created all of us. I always acknowledge the humanity in everybody that I see.
Are you afraid of some of them? Like, do you? I want you to be shackled when we in the room
Well,
or
you know,
something.
yes, I've had situations where, yes, my clients do need to have more security uh, based on, again, a lot of it based on their mental illness. A lot of them are in an active level of what I call active psychosis, whether it's the trauma from the event, the charges, the criminal charges, or it's that whole conglomeration of the event plus the abuse they lived as a child, plus their mental illness. And when you get all of that mixed in together, a lot of my clients are very unsafe to be around, even in the facilities. Like I said, there's some of my clients I've had to have extra security. But again, that's due to the mental illness in most cases. I've not had a client that needed extra security who was not mentally ill. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Of the instances where I've had to have, officers I knew, and they'll say, okay, Miss Thompson, we're gonna be right here, just, we're here, we understand, we know, and sometimes we have those conversations. But of those instances that have happened, and I'll say twice, I'm thinking of all of my clients that I've represented facing the death penalty. Of those two, they were severely psychotic. And I mean, for years. I'm not talking about, you hear on the news, oh, such and such is accused of this, and now they're saying they were insane. No, I'm talking about my clients who have been on mental health medications at the age of 5. And yes, I have a client who has been on mental health medication starting at the age of 5. So that should set off alarms right there. Why would a child need mental health medication at 5, right? So I've had clients, like I said, where yes, uh, added security might be necessary. Of those two that I'm remembering,
Yeah.
they were severely mentally ill.
It is shucks. If somebody knew what a child, and I'm sure most instances do, the schools know, what have you, what a child is going through at home, could they, at an early age, let's say at 3 or 4 or 2 or 1 or something, could they then be able to do something to counteract what they see so that they can become a normal person? Let's call it that. Is it, you know what
I
I
believe
mean?
so. I believe so because again, I have such a strong belief system. Um, I believe that everything can be, if it's properly addressed by professionals, medical staff, mental health professionals, yes, yes. The stories that I've seen and heard of my clients when they were children, and a lot of times, we see things and either we don't pay attention or, let me just mind my business, you know, where a child shows up to school and hasn't eaten, and sometimes, and I'm not accusing anybody, okay?
Yeah,
But sometimes we'll see that child and say, okay, let me just mind my business. You see a child showing up for school completely filthy and dirty. And a lot of times, I'm not accusing anybody. Oh,
yeah, I
let
got
me just mind my business. You see a neighbor across the street
you.
and you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
okay, why
yeah,
is that child out at
yeah,
2 o'clock in the morning?
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. Where is this connected to the brain? Is it left side, right side that makes all of this store
Usually,
into the brain what the child has gone through and what they see?
usually any type of trauma, whether it's physical, mental, sexual, whatever, it can affect, and I'm not a medical doctor. Remember, I stay in my
Yeah,
lane.
yeah,
I
yeah,
always
yeah,
hire
yeah,
my
yeah, yeah,
experts.
yeah,
But it can affect your executive functioning. Your executive functioning is how you make decisions, uh, how you function every day, how we all function every day. But abuse of any level, especially, and not just abuse, let's really break it down. Abuse also includes abandonment, hunger, all of that in an infant or a young child can affect the way you think. And that's why I brought up examples. Sometimes we might see a child that's hungry. We're like, oh, okay, well, let me take a basket of food. But if that child is hungry all of these days of their lives, how does that affect their brain development?
I got
These
you.
are questions that we really need to research. And I'm not the one, I'm a lawyer. I stay in my
Yeah,
lane.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But experts that I have hired on my cases have all taught me this. And I teach it when I'm in court. I teach it to my juries when they're trying to when they're trying to reach a verdict. This is what I teach my juries when I'm talking to them when they're trying to decide what sentence is appropriate for my client. And that's why, again, remember I said I see humanity in everybody. That's why I see the humanity in every single person I meet. The dirty person, the ugly person, the beautiful person, all of these labels that we, superficially put on people. I see the humanity in every human being. And my work I think has brought me to that place.
When we go back and earlier you said it goes back to slavery. What
Mhm.
what was some of the traumas that slaves endured, as you can imagine, and
Yeah.
maybe what was the response to in some people, and let's say first negative, and I'm gonna end up on a good response.
So, and there's many studies on this about the impact of slavery, and a lot of people reject that, thinking, well, slavery was way back then, 1800s, 1700s, who cares, right? But the impact of that can be genetically passed down. And so that cannot be overlooked, although it's often disputed. I've heard the arguments where people say, oh, well, that was then, and we've come so far. Look at all of our successes. We've had a Black president. We've had all of these accomplishments, all of these billionaires that are of color. How can you say that? Well, that's true. And like I mentioned before, depending on, and I can't speak for other people's successes, but I know for mine, my success is directly related to my strong belief in God, my reliance on Him for every single thing. So, but going back to the impact of that, again, while it can be disputed, it can be argued, but the trauma that our ancestors lived through, some of them died. The separation of the families, and we see that today. That didn't just show up in our community, but it was illegal back in many, many hundreds of years ago for Black men and women to even be married, and children being ripped apart from our families, husbands and wives, or males and females being forced to be separated. All of those are traumatic events that still impact us today.
Um, there's a story of a lady who she's come on the show. Her great great grandfather was a college educated guy, you know, and the story goes that at some point he had a problem with a white guy. Him and his wife had to leave town. He had a young wife, well not young wife, but a wife with young kids, and he had to leave town. He went back to the town he left from because of what had happened there, and he was never seen again.
Mm.
So they believe he was lynched. That had to be some trauma on his family, on his kids. So she would have had to really been strong to overcome losing her husband under those kind of unforeseen circumstances and now being a widow.
Mm.
I guess my question is, I don't know what the question is. I'm
You know
telling the
what?
story.
But no, you made it still in that example, in that story, there's trauma in that. There's trauma in that. And it shows up in so many ways. That's really what, in fact, my whole law practice has been about. It shows up in so many different ways. I see so many Black and Brown people. It's so intertwined in the criminal justice system, whether it's incarceration or you're on probation or you're on parole. Um, and I'm not making excuses for
Mm, right,
bad decisions, bad behaviors. It can't be excused. There are
right,
consequences
right,
for
right,
every, just like, your child, eats 5 cookies when you told him to eat one, there's going to be a consequence for that.
right, right,
So I believe in consequences,
right,
but it shows up is my point. I'm not saying that people should be excused from it at all.
right,
But
right.
my only point is the trauma that has been within our communities, it shows up. It doesn't go away.
My let's say a kid that says my dad is in jail and that's only I've been going to the jail since I was 3 to visit him. I'm used to jail now. It
Mm.
doesn't scare me knowing that's what my father is. I'm not saying personally, but that's a
Right.
story you could have heard, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Well,
I'll never forget. And let me tell you this. I did a
yeah,
career
yeah, yeah,
day.
yeah,
You know how a lot of
yeah,
professionals
yeah.
do career day. My daughter is a veterinarian and she did one, and I've done one as a lawyer and all of that. And I remember I was in career doing it at an elementary school, and I want to say it was like third or fourth grade. And I was describing the courtroom, and I was just, some of the kids wanted to know, like, oh, well, what's in a courtroom? And do you know, one of the students said, oh, I know. And I was like, oh, maybe he knows. I'm thinking he read something or saw something on TV. And he started talking about his uncle and brother and all of them had been to court. And I was going, oh my God. And he knew what probation was, he knew what jail was, he knew what the judge was, not from seeing it on television, but because that's what he saw in his family. And I was going, oh my God. And the teacher and I looked at each other like, this is not what I thought.
Right, right. Is there what's your take on seeing a psychiatrist and professionals to help one get over their mental health?
You know
Is
what?
yeah,
Yeah, that is never talked about or not talked about enough. Let me put it like that. I shouldn't say it's never talked about. It's not talked about enough. I believe everybody, myself included, we all, and I've gone through counseling. I think every person on every human on the planet should seek counseling. And I think it's more critical when there are generational um, elements of trauma. Because, like I said, it's going to show up. And maybe it won't show up as mental illness in you, or it won't show up in addiction, but maybe it shows up in a broken family. Maybe it shows up in uh, criminal activity. So it shows up. Trauma doesn't just, if it's not addressed by a professional, it's going to crop up somewhere. So,
right.
yes.
A couple more, and then we're going to get into the book, and highlight some of the other more happier moments, I guess, if I may say.
Yeah.
That kids will shoot in a crowd
Mm-hmm.
looking for one person, or you kick me out of the party, and
Yes.
this is my response. I'm shooting in the crowd, and I just did not. Did I think I might kill somebody? I know every instance is
Right.
different. And then you end up killing 4 or 5 people who had nothing to do with what you're mad about.
Mm-hmm.
What could that be for somebody
So
to be that insensitive, I call it?
you know what? That oh gosh, that's a big question. Because see, the last word you said, insensitive, right? We have to get to the root of that. Because there is, and I've seen a certain, what I think is a certain insensitivity for each other. So that example that you gave that we hear about all the time, John got kicked out of the party, so he goes to his car or he leaves and comes back and shoots up the place, right?
Right,
Those are terrible, terrible. Oh my God. And then innocent people who had nothing to do with John getting kicked out, don't even
right.
know John, have lost their lives or they're injured. Terrible. But that level of insensitivity, let's question that. And that's really one of the reasons I became a lawyer. People always, well, what made you want to do that? Because
Yeah,
I'm always a questioner. I question everything. Like in that instance, what gave John or what led him, what happened in John's life to make him insensitive, or what happened in his life to prevent him from thinking about the consequences? Like, did he think, oh, if I shoot somebody, they're going to get up like on video games?
right.
You know, so what happened in his life? Because you didn't do that. The next person didn't do that. I didn't do that. What made John do that? And that was really one of the reasons why I became a lawyer. I wanted to know why. What made John do that? And the only way to get to that answer is to address the root causes of crime. All this stuff about incarceration, probation, parole, yes, that has its place. I'm not disputing that. That has its place, that has its relevance. But unless and until we deal with the root causes of crimes, you will never get away from incarceration, probation, parole.
Right.
You've got to wonder why. You've got to address children, not when they're 17, not when they're 25, not when they're 30, but when they're 2, 3, and 4. That's when you that's when you can correct and change a generation.
Which leads to my next question, and you just gave the answer. If you had unlimited amount of money and you pick just a community, I ain't saying the whole world or nothing like
Right.
that. Let's just say a neighborhood. What would you, and you got, like I say, unlimited amount of money, what would you suggest that you, with your money and the authorities would back you, that would make a difference in the lives of those in that community?
Mhm.
You follow my question?
I do. I do. I would create programs that are directly individualized for the child in front of me. And notice I said the child, not the person, not the person. We've got to, when I say we, and I mean all of us, all of us, all of us. I was listening to a podcast recently, and I won't go into the names, but someone made a point of within the Greek letter community, the D9 Greek letter community, and I don't know if this is true. This is just what I heard on a podcast, that when during the last presidential election, Kamala Harris ran, of course, and they said that within the D9, the Divine Nine Greek letter community, $30 million was raised like almost overnight. Now, I don't know if that's true. I
Yeah,
have no
yeah,
idea.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
repeating
yeah.
what I heard. What if that money, and I'm not saying it shouldn't have gone to her, I'm not making
Yeah,
any
yeah.
type of presidential statement, but if that level and amount of money can be raised that quickly, why are our schools dysfunctional? Why are children going to school dirty? Why are children, when they get breakfast and lunch at school, that's their last meal? Why is it during the summertime you have children sometimes breaking in to get something to eat?
Yeah. I
So
remember
I
hearing
have,
a
yeah.
story of I remember hearing a young girl. She called in on the radio. She said, "With the bad things that happened in the black family, I wish that white people would take over and raise us."
Mm,
I remember hearing her say that. It stuck with me.
wow.
And I'm a pivot golf for that. I spoke at a school once, and it was I think high school, let's call it, and then you author come on and speak, and the kids were goofing off. They were asking questions, and I kind of thought that was cool, but some of them were talking out of place, what have you. There was one young lady in there, and I never forget it. It made an impact on me that didn't say nothing.
Mm,
And at the end of the set, and I could tell she was smart. She sat proper and everything, and she had all these other black kids around her. And I knew she couldn't wait till she graduated.
mm.
Because when I asked them, I said, "Which one of y'all you think is gonna make it?" And they all pointed at her.
Wow.
But she could not even smile. She couldn't say nothing because she knew that it brought too much attention to her.
Mm,
What this is and I'm going in. I said all that to say this. What
mhm,
is the angle of black people not wanting other black people to make it?
mm.
That's I know I said a lot, but
Yeah, yeah.
what's that? Why we don't want others to? Why we gonna hate on you if you do well?
Well, you know what? Anytime somebody hates on somebody else, that's a reflection of what's going on in me. There's something in me I'm not comfortable with. There's something in me, you use the word hate, there's something in me I hate. There's a whole level of self-hate. Going back to the first thing that you mentioned with the person that called in, needing someone white to come and fix us.
Yeah, that's what
That's a
she
level
said.
of self-hate.
Yeah,
Because if we knew who we were and who our descendants are, who we're from, where we came from, we didn't just come from slaves. I came from kings, queens, business owners. And I shouldn't be telling you, you know this already because
yeah,
you're the
yeah, yeah,
author of it.
yeah.
Those are my ancestors. As I've heard many people say, slavery is not Black history, that's their history. That's not my history. My history comes from kings and
I
queens,
love it.
rulers.
I love it.
That's Black history, not slavery. That's not Black history.
So with all that you do, you decided to write a book. What is the basis of you? I mean, and a series of books.
Yeah.
What made you decide to do it, and what are the books about?
So my desire to do it, it came from my being I had such a level of unrest, Anthony. When I say unrest, I mean being in the criminal justice system for these many years as a lawyer, as a defense attorney, doing all of these capital cases, my unrest came from what can I do to make a difference? Yes, I'm making a difference in each of my clients' lives because I've saved lives from being executed. I get that part. But how can I help the world? Because my clients that come to me are so mentally, physically, and sexually abused by the time they become my clients that it's almost too late. How can I make a difference? And God speaks to me very clearly. I mentioned my spirituality a lot. God speaks to me, and He literally woke me up and He said, to get to who you want to heal who you want to heal, the masses, you got to get to the kids. And that's why I focus on the little kids. And at first I'm like, God, I can't. Am I hearing you right? Because my children are grown. My youngest is 25.
Sure, sure.
So I don't have children in my home. So why would I do this? But I know what I heard. And what God planted in me was a vision. And that vision is if you save the child, you can save the world. We've got to get to our children. We've got to get to our children.
What do you talk about in your books?
In my book, Kinky Curly Mind is the landmark book, and that book is about a little girl who goes to school. She's in first grade. She has kinky hair, like my hair, like all of our like our natural hair, and she's embarrassed because she feels like she doesn't look like her friends who have a different texture of hair, who look differently from her. So she feels ashamed of herself. And so she goes home and her grandmother is there and she tells her grandmother, I just don't look like my friends. My hair doesn't look like my friends. And her grandmother sits her down and she just loves on her and she tells her how beautiful she is, not because of her hair, because she's in here, inside, she's a beautiful person. And that's something that can't change. And you might say, well, why are you saying that? You can't say everybody's beautiful. Yes, I can, because we are descendants of the most powerful people that were ever created. Kings, queens, that's who we are. And let me tell you something, the only way that our community can rise, can heal, can become one is once we look inside of ourselves and we understand who we are. That's how, we talked about the insensitive person that could commit a horrendous crime because that person doesn't know who he is. You talk about the person that called in. Well, our community could be healed if some other person could heal it. No, it's within us. And it's not until we learn that it's us, we are good enough. I'm good enough. Anthony Brogdon is good enough. That's how we excel. Once we accept that. And we talk about how there can be dislike within our community. Like I said, if I dislike you, then that means I dislike something in me. And that's what I need to heal. I need to heal what the dislike is in me. If I'm insensitive, there's something in me that needs to be healed. And I need to understand who I am, understand who I'm a descendant of, who my ancestors are. So that was why I created Adventures with Kai. The others are coming out. I'm so excited about them because they all address that one critical thing, self-love. They address self-esteem. That's what heals our communities.
I must admit, being a guy as I am, I hope one of your books is about for guys.
Yes, it
And the
is.
reason why I say that is
It
because
is.
I notice little boys don't get much of anything.
I
When I go
know.
places, it's the men aren't taking them, and I'm not saying completely, but it's
Right.
always it's the women, the single parent woman home, and
Yeah.
the little boy he's left out there with nothing.
There
uh,
is.
I
There is.
see them with their daughters, and they got all these dances, and they doing churches with the girls and stuff like that. And I really don't see the boys
Yeah.
in nothing other than
I know.
sports.
Right. Other than sports.
Other than sports.
Right, right. And we got to change that. And guess what? I'm changing that landscape because Kai, who's the character in this book,
Yeah.
she has a little brother. And the
Cool.
little brother
Cool.
will and that will be the focus of her
Cool.
little brother. So I'm excited about
Let's because
yeah,
we need them boys.
we
I
need it.
mean,
We need
we need
because
them for
our
sure.
young boys have got to learn that they're kings. They are kings in the making.
Yes.
And once they learn
And deal with
that,
that trauma, and we got to
yes,
get that set aside. I really appreciate this. You got now that is the cover of the book, right? That
yes,
you
this is
in the
the
behind
cover of
the,
the book.
and that's
Oops,
the
I don't
book
know.
there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I also have the journal. Oops, I don't know if
Oh
you can see it.
yeah, we'll put it in the.
There
Now
we
the
go.
journal is what? What's the
The
difference between
journal,
the journal and the book?
the book is the story of the little girl,
Right.
and the journal is a place for men, women to write your thoughts. So when
Oh,
we
I
talk about
see.
trauma,
I see.
one of the things that I know has helped me in my life is sometimes writing things out. And in my journal, I have affirmations on every page.
I see.
Every page. Like, for example, this one says, I am whole just as I am. Oh, I don't think it'll
I
show
got
up.
it. Yes, yeah. We'll figure. Let me ask you this. We got a little more time. Plus, you jamming so much. When a person prays to God and they've had trauma, what could that prayer be? Take the trauma away. Help me understand it. Help me get over it. I'm giving you examples. Tell me what that prayer should be if I had trauma and I'm asking God.
You know what? I'm no theologian. I don't pretend to
Yes,
be.
yes, yes.
But what I do know about my God is that he is all wonderful. He makes no mistakes. So anything that I think I have in me that's less than, like trauma, or even if it's a physical illness or a mental illness, I know that God didn't create that part of me. And because he's such a perfect God, and I can surrender to the perfection that he is, that any ill feelings that I feel, again, whether it's physical, mental, or whatever that I feel, I know that my God can remove it. I know that my God can remove it. And not only that, because I am who I am, because he created me, and he created me on purpose. I wasn't an accident. I didn't just show up, in Montgomery, Alabama years ago. But he created me on purpose and for a purpose. So, therefore, any trauma I feel, any mental illness I feel, any physical defect I think I may have, that means I can overcome it because he made me an overcomer. He didn't make me by accident. I came here intentionally. And any trauma that I do have, I have a purpose for it. So if my trauma is, and I can just make one up, I don't know if let's say I'm an alcoholic or that's how it shows up in my life, I can walk through that disease and become a conqueror and show the rest of the world what a great God I have and how I was delivered and how I walked through it. So the prayer becomes a conversation with God. And I think all prayer should be a conversation where he is downloading in me and I am speaking what I hear. I have affirmations. My prayer is always going to include gratitude, a place of gratitude, because he is the God that he is.
I love
And
it.
I know that I am always a conqueror. That's gratitude.
I love it. That's the answer. I got one more that I always ask you. Is there a question I have not asked you?
Oh, wow.
Is there something that I mean, I know we ain't cover it all,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
is there anything that come to mind that you want to say to people who might watch this other than what
The
you just
only
said?
thing that's always been on my heart is, um, so many people that I encounter, whether it's in the criminal justice system or in the community, where um, where there's lack, whether it's financial. We talk about mental illness a lot in this program today. Whether there's any type of trauma, we've talked about that. All of that is some form of lack, right? And if I could leave any nugget, it is, let's raise our thinking, right? Because when I think higher, and when I say, well, you say think higher, what does that mean? Let me unpack that real quickly. Thinking higher means that I'm in alignment with who I am. Because remember, I'm not, I didn't just show up on the earth. My ancestors are kings and queens. So I embody that. So that's what I'm talking about. I rise up to that level of thinking, not this lower level of lack.
I got you.
So any level of lack that I feel, again, whether it's trauma, what have you, that we've already covered, remember who we are as a people, as a person, as who I am created to be. Because we're all here for a purpose, and um, that would be what I would leave people with.
I love it. Hey, everybody! I told you gonna get deep, and I'm almost tearing up. I'm close to it. We got an angel in front of us.
Oh, I
Gotta
received
be.
it. I received that.
It can't be nothing else. Because you could have chose a bunch of other careers as a lawyer. You could have
Oh
been in
yeah,
entertainment law. You could have been in business law.
right.
You could have had other kind of clients, in criminal law.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
and I know this ain't the right word, but this explains. You got the worst of these, and I know that ain't the right word. Excuse me for saying that. But and that's your passion. You've been doing it a long time. Do you take that home with you? I mean, or can you leave it at the door as soon as you walk out the jail?
It's
How do you
hard.
do that?
It's hard. It's called self-care. And there are moments when I just have to just divorce myself from everything.
You got to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do it a lot, actually.
Yeah, I can. You
The
got to
work is,
take a walk around the water
yeah,
or
yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
have to
yeah. I
practice
can imagine. You got to do
self-care.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations. I told you how you're gonna like this one. I told you it's gonna go deep, and I told you that I kind of thought that's what was gonna happen because I've had a conversation with her because like I said she came to the book sign I had it in Montgomery and I could feel that passion, the passion. She bubbly and everything. I said, what's this bubbly lady walking around here? And then when she told me, I said, you bubbly and that too. That's
Yeah, we talked
beautiful.
all day. We did.
Yeah,
We did.
yeah,
Good conversation.
yeah. This is deep.
Mm.
Hit the like button. There is no love button. Hit the notifications bell. When the videos come up, you get a ding, a shot. Tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. It's been 4 years and more. And it's people like this that come on that make me a better person. Y'all got to feel this. I know you do. And go to her website. What's your website? Yeah, yeah. You got a website where people can get the book and
Yeah.
all that good stuff.
The website is zellapublishing.com. ZELLA publishing.com.
All that will be in the description. Go there, get that book. The book is a bestseller on its way, and all her series. And do you do public speaking on this too, or something?
I do.
You
I
do,
do a
yeah,
lot of, I do. I speak in my community. I speak to youth a lot. That's my
yeah,
passion.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's all on the website where you can reach out to her and have her come and make your community better as a result of what she will say. Everybody go to my website businessintheblack.net, learn where I'm speaking at, and get you a copy of the book. And even go to Amazon and watch my documentary. And to you, sister, I say this, and I mean this. I really mean this. I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. I love who you are and who you became because somehow in that Montgomery, in that neighborhood, in that block, in that house, in the doors, in the bedroom, it all formulated you to be
Mm,
an angel. Way back when you read a book, you like to read, I'm sure. You
mhm,
saw something, you heard something, somebody said something to you, and you took the mantle.
mm.
You didn't give up on this because it had to be scary at some point to say, dang, is this my plight in life? And you went with it and did it so successfully, reached the highest heights
Well,
with
thank
God walking you along the way
Yes,
in
yes.
those footsteps. We know that scenario, that slogan. And
Mm.
that's a beautiful thing. Keep doing it as you so see fit. We need you on the front line. You a foot soldier. That's what I call you. You seeing them. You know there's a penalty to be paid, but you at least trying to understand how it got there.
Yes,
Maybe
yes.
some people underneath that, family and otherwise, will be able to say, I don't want this to happen to no one else. So on and
Hmm.
so forth.
Right.
I'm taking liberties in saying that. And so with that, I'll say bye bye. Okay. How about this? Because you an angel like person. Is there a Bible verse that you want to close us out on?
Ooh. Oh gosh, it's so many. Psalm 91, the very first verse. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High. And that's how it starts. And then the rest of that whole chapter is just what carries me. But I just focus on that very first part. He who dwells in the secret place. And the secret place is where I get my strength. That's why I focus on that. He who dwells in the secret place.
There it is, everybody. That's what it looks like. Thank you so very much for coming on the show. I'll stay in touch. We'll talk some more. Everybody go to her website. Lift this sister up in prayer too. She'll
Mm,
feel it.
thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.